We're short of firemen.
Uh,
We're waiting on
Fire Chief Russell.
Or something, doing my thing.
Storm chaser.
All right, let's, we're running a few minutes late, but let's go ahead and get started. And it's about 4 after 7 on Tuesday, April 30th, 2024. And we'll start with roll call to my left.
Councilmember Paul Wimmer.
Mike Warrington, City Council Member.
Jody O'Kady, City Council Member.
Ronnie Price, Mayor.
Homer, City Council Member.
Phil Hamilton, City Council Member.
Tim, City Council Member.
Bob Buchanan, Police Chief.
Rick Lance, Director of Public Works and Utilities.
Matt Kane, Finance Director.
JT Klaus, City Attorney.
Dana Engstrom, City Clerk.
Les Mangus, Director, Community Development.
Jolene Graham, Assistant City Administrator.
Jennifer McCausland, City Administrator.
All right, at this time, Rick Neubauer, Lead Police and Fire Chaplain, will lead us in invocation and prayer. How you doing, Rick? Thank you for being here.
Lord, we come before you now. We're thankful for the rain that you've given us. We ask for protection for the citizens and watch over us, keep us from any severe weather, and bless us in that way. We just ask again for wisdom and discernment tonight as we gather together with those that we've elected to lead us and guide us. We pray for that you would give them the heart of servants to lead and best as we can for our city. Pray that you would bless them, watch over them, and keep them too. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
And this time, would you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excuse me. At this time, I'll open the podium for a public forum. If you have something you'd like to say, state your name, your address, and keep it short. No takers? All right. Public forum is closed. Acceptance of agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Proclamation 7-1, exciting times, state spelling bee. And Phil's going to read this for us.
Whereas Carrie Cheshire, 8th grader at Andover Middle School, won the 2024 Kansas Press Association State Spelling Bee, and whereas the State Spelling Bee was held in Salina, Kansas, at Kansas Wesleyan University, and whereas Carrie's winning word was ahuehuete, a type of Mexican cypress tree, and whereas Carrie is believed to be the first Andover student to win the State Spelling Bee, and whereas based on a spelling test, Carrie had to be one of the best 5 spellers in the 8th grade. From there, he won the school spelling bee, which sent him to the county spelling bee, and winning that led him to the state bee. And whereas his English language teachers, Anna Mitchell, has worked with the spelling bee participants for the last 9 years. And whereas Carrie studied many words in preparation and attended practices, and whereas Carrie now qualifies for the nationally televised Scripps National Spelling Bee, which begins May 28th in Washington, D.C. Therefore, I, Phil Hamilton, with the City Council assembled in regular session on the 30th day of April 2024, hereby proclaim May 1st, 2024, Carrie Cheshire Spelling Bee State Champion Day.
Good job, Carrie.
I would have messed that word up really bad.
Yeah, me too.
I didn't even know that was a word.
Can't even pronounce the word, so.
I read that. I'm like, did they misspell something?
I read it. I was like, can I get that in a sentence, please? The origin.
Can you spell that
Right.
phonetically?
Presentation, public service recognition weekend. Megan is going to talk to us about that.
Good evening, City Council and Mayor. Next week, as some of you may know, is our Public Service Recognition Week, May 5th through the 11th. This is the time when we recognize our city employees for all they've done. As you've probably seen, there's a dispatcher day, there's a Parks and Rec month, there's all kinds of days and months to keep track of. So this is the one time where we just try to lump everybody together in one big recognition. So in the past, we have done a proclamation at the city council meetings, but we changed it up this year. So we're going to be showing a little highlight video. So please check out the screens. And I added no audio on purpose just in case it wouldn't work. So there's no audio to come.
Ooh, these are nice new screens.
Who's that?
Mhm.
That's cool.
Right. Getting to Kalia reaccreditation presentation. Tim Basing, right?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and all that's in attendance. Tonight, we have Tim Baser here from Kalia. He's going to be presenting our reaccreditation award. He'll explain that a little bit for you, but I also want to make sure that Becky's unfortunately can't be here tonight. She's watching the weather for us. And same as the fire chief, he's out there because there's some pretty bad weather, not directly hitting our city, but yet close enough. So they're monitoring that for us as we're in here doing this. So Tim, if you'd like to go ahead, Andrew.
Hi, I'm Tim Basinger. I'm the Regional Program Manager for Kalia, and I'll expound on that just a little bit more. Mayor Price, City Council members, and City Administrator McCausland, it's my pleasure to be here this evening. The Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, known by the acronym of Kalia, is a nonprofit organization based out of Gainesville, Virginia. It was created in 1979 by the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the National Sheriff's Association, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, and the Police Executive Research Forum. Kalia provides agencies the opportunity to voluntarily apply standards representing best practices in the delivery of public safety services into their written directives, procedures, and actual practices. Many agencies are reluctant to have outsiders review their work and processes and point out areas that need improvement. The accreditation process requires agencies to be open to change so they can demonstrate business is conducted in a way that meets contemporary law enforcement standards. Chief Buchanan and his staff understand that involvement in the Kalia process minimizes the agency's exposure to liability, demonstrates accountability to the public, and guarantees professional management practices. The Andover Police Department maintains electronic files associated with standards in the CALEA Law Enforcement Accreditation Program and the CALEA Communications, Public Safety Communications Accreditation Program. Most of these files require written directive, and all the files require continuous proofs of the agency's compliance with the standards. The contents of these electronic files were reviewed annually by CALEA Assessment Services employees. At the end of the 4-year cycle, 2 assessors arrived at the agency to conduct a site-based assessment. Focus areas of key operational and administrative functions were examined through the use of interviews and observations to further confirm that high-quality public safety services were being provided to your community. A report of the assessment activities and outcomes was reviewed at a hearing conducted by CALEA commissioners at a conference in Montgomery, Alabama this past March. During a banquet on the last day of the conference, the commission granted a 4th award for law enforcement accreditation and a 2nd award for public safety communications to the Andover Police Department. At this time, I'd like to present the certificate of accreditation to Chief Buck Buchanan. I'd also like to recognize the efforts of Accreditation Manager Andrea Evans for her hard work, and also Communications Director Becky Day and all the employees of the Andover Police Department.
Consent agenda 9-1 through 9-8.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve consent agenda items 9.1 through 9.8 as presented.
Second, Hamilton.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. We always look forward to this. General Obligation Bond Series A 2024. Bond bid award. And Jenny, is that right? You're going to start with this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, I'm going to hand this over to Clayton Kelly with Piper Sandler. We had a bond sale earlier today, and Clayton's actually literally driven through quite the storm to get here tonight to tell you about the results of that sale.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for allowing me to be here. And again, Clayton Kelly with Piper Sandler, financial advisor for this city. The sale this morning was exciting. I didn't realize, I think the drive down was maybe even a little bit more exciting with all the storms, but really good result today for the city. So I'll just kind of back up a little bit. This morning we had a sale at 11 o'clock that allowed the city to essentially secure that final interest rate for the permanent financing for the several special assessment projects, as well as that Family Future Forward projects. Kind of as a reminder on those, especially for the Family Future Forward, we did the internal temp note financing last year. So now we're just kind of locking everything in for permanent financing. As a result of that sale, the city received 13 bids, the most that we have seen through Piper Sandler for any of our clients in a long time. So a very good result. And what kind of differentiates this result from others is all 13 of those bids came in within 11 basis points of each other, 0.11%. So just a really competitive result. The winning bid was from Janney Montgomery at a 3.72% initially. You might see two different rates in your numbers from them. We were actually able to resize, so downsize the bond financing as a result of the premium that they issued with their bid. So as a result of reducing interest costs with that, it also reduces that final interest rate from 3.72 to 3.71%. With that, that allows the city then to be able to have funds by May 29th to be able to essentially kind of start the permanent financing process on that date. In addition, tonight you have an ordinance and a resolution in front of you to also essentially have that final authorization to lock everything in and get everything from a document perspective ready for closing by May 29th. Finally, I would just say that the city has an incredible, outstanding rating at the AA minus, and I think that probably drove a big result of not just the bond financing side, but the number of bidders that decided to bid on this. And really that goes to a result of the hard work of Jenny, Matt, Jolene, everything. There's a credit rating process behind this, similar to if you guys were to go out and try to get a mortgage or something like that. Similar type of process, but a little bit more goes into it from just the rating call that we have to have with the issuer or the rating agency, as well as several questions, follow-up questions that they ask. What we've noticed recently with rating criteria, there have been downgrades for cities over the past few years. Management score is becoming a bigger part of that rating criteria, and just how well management does is they view as a reflection of the overall credit of a specific entity. And I just want to cite, as part of that rating process, they give a report to give some idea of, how they come up with this AA minus rating. Strong management with good financial management policies, practices under financial management assessment, highlighted by the 5-year capital improvement plan, conservative revenue and expenditure assumptions based on historical look back. So a strong institutional framework score. So I just wanted to highlight that as well as kind of being a big part of that internal credit rating score for you guys. And again, a very proud piece of this part of financing that you should be proud of, and it ultimately resulting in a very good final interest rate. So with that, I'll just pause there and then happy to take any questions that you might have.
Any questions?
Should we be able to look forward to this sizable interest, or not interest, but the competitors the next time we do a bond sale as well? Or?
Yeah, it could very well happen again. It's in the past issues we've had 4 or 5 bidders, which I would say is still a really good result. I mean, anytime we see over 3 bids, that's obviously from our standpoint, a competitive process that we go through. I think there's a couple of dynamics in terms of having that many 13 supply in the market is a big reasoning for it. In the state of Kansas this year so far, just haven't had the same supply in terms of issuance that we might see. So I think just given that the credit, it being a general obligation bond, 20 years, over 20 million, that's kind of an ideal financing that a lot of these banks are looking for to bid on. So I think there's a lot of different reasons for the 13 and why it showed up, but I would be shocked if we get 13 again. But just if later this year, potential financing, you might be looking at plus 7 or 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I have one more question, Mr. Mayor. Can you explain why some of them have the total insurance premium and some do not have the insurance premium?
Yeah. So essentially that is from an investor perspective. When they go to bid, they're working with investors that are interested in buying these bonds. And so right now, the insurance premiums that these insurance companies are charging to the banks to hold insurance on the outstanding bond issue is so low right now that it just makes sense where investors are saying, hey, if we're only going to lose 5 basis points or 10 basis points on the yield for holding these bonds, in addition, having the backing of insurance for that, we'll go ahead and take that. So it's kind of a function of how low premiums are right now to be able to carry insurance on a bond issue. We're finding it on almost every single competitive sale that we're doing, even with a high credit rating like this. It's very unusual in the past, but it's just those insurance premiums are so low that they just kind of add it on to their bid.
So could you say it again about how staff is involved in the change or the upgrade or whatever you want to
Yep.
say it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, credit rating process is a key part of, you go through a rating call and they send you, 15 to 20 questions prior to that call, whether it's talking about kind of past audits, economics, capital, how have you been managing your financials, kind of explaining just the results, the financial results of your city over the past few years, and what are your future plans for issuing debt, and how are you going to be able to do that fiscally responsibly. And so through that process, you have to, it's a reflection of the city. So we have city staff pretty much take the lead on that conversation. So there's about an hour call that the city has with the rating agency, in addition to answering those questions. And the rating agency, especially more recently, has taken that call and the response to those questions that they ask more seriously than they have in the past, just because they've seen a lot of city turnover over the past few years. And so that management framework score is heavily weighted in the overall credit rating. So it's just having a solid, I would say anything over like an A rating for a city or an entity in Kansas is a very good credit result, and a reflection. AA- is several notches above that rating. And so it's just, that is a reflection, in my opinion, and of, as you can see on the credit report for the city, a reflection of why they decided to keep that AA- rating versus potentially dropping it lower.
And does that impact how many people actually bid on getting this?
Yes. Yep. So having a solid credit rating is going to go a long ways to having more banks that are interested to bid on it, just given that it's a 20-year financing, and having investors have interest in a bond issue that goes out 20 years. You want to have a solid credit rating as a result of, just first off, having interest in that, but second, in the final result. So the final interest rate is going to be reflected there too.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to award purchase of the Geo Series A 2024 bonds in the amount of $25,155,000 to Janie Montgomery Scott LLC at the net interest cost of $7,457,833.86.
Second, Hamilton.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. 10-2 bond ordinance, and Jenny will speak to us about this as well.
Mr. Mayor and Council, you guys, I think mostly, except for, I guess, our 3 newer folks, have done enough of these to know that after we do a sale, then we need to pass an ordinance and then a resolution, which sometimes seems a little counter to how we typically do the ordinance resolution order. But that is the way in which we need to do that. And your bond counsel's here if you want to ask a technical question on why. But these documents are necessary. They do finalize the rates. They do finalize the terms and the closing. And as Clayton shared just a minute ago, we will be closing on this issue in late May.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve an ordinance authorizing the issuance of Series A 2024 general obligation bonds of the city of Andover, Kansas.
Second.
So I'd like to point out to the people that are listening on the TV and out there that I want to make sure we don't gloss over the fact that this rating has a lot to do with how good a staff we have here for the city of Andover. And I just don't want to slide over it and just let it know that it's not magic. These folks work very hard to make this kind of rating happen, correct? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Bond resolution, forgive me for I'm having issues. Bond resolution 10-3, and Jenny will speak to us about that as well.
I don't really have anything to add from what I said last time unless you guys have any questions.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve resolution describing the form and details of Series A 2024 General Obligation Bonds of the City of Andover, Kansas.
Second.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thanks, Clayton. Drive safe.
11/1/2024-2025 employee benefit renewal, and Chastity's here to educate us.
Good evening. Chastity Page, Director of Human Resources. Tonight, we're bringing you the recommendations for the 24-25 plan year. Before I hand things off to Jayla with IMA, our benefits broker, I did want to provide a little bit of background for some of our newer council members. So in July of 2023, we made the transition to self-funded medical insurance plan. That decision was made after several years of having to pass along increases to our employees that were 6%, 9%, and most recently 16%. We knew that was not sustainable for the city or our employees. So we worked with IMA to develop a budget to pay all potential claims based on the historical data. And then we also developed partnerships with a third-party administrator and pharmacy benefits manager to process the claims while we fund them. We knew there was a possibility that the self-funded insurance strategy would likely take years before we saw much of an impact. As we're wrapping up our first year, we are pleased at the way that the plan is running. And I don't want to steal any of Jayla's thunder, which as I was thinking about that, I wasn't thinking, oh, we're having bad weather. So pun not really intended, but I'll go ahead and let her present the recommendations for the 24-25 plan year.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and Administration. So yes, I am here to present the renewal for 2024-2025. And as Chastity shared, we moved self-funded last year starting July 1 of 2024. And the plan has been running really well through the first 9 months of the plan year at 80% of expected claims. The city's been able to save back a reserve to date of $399,562. That is on top of the reserve that was already in there. So things are running very well. On top of that, we moved straight from a fully insured plan, and the estimated savings through March over the 2023 fully insured premiums is right now running at about $75,000. So all indications at this point in time prove that it was a very good move thus far. And that's reflected in the renewal numbers as well. So due to the good performance in the first 9 months of the plan year, the overall medical renewal was a 1% increase. And that was roughly around $18,618. Because of the reserve that's been built up due to the good experience in this first plan year and the reserve that was already in there, we are recommending that the city set their budget at 99% of expected this year. That keeps the city's contribution flat as well as the employee contribution flat. So no changes to rates for the city or the employee. The partnerships with UMR as our third-party administrator and SmithRx as our pharmacy benefit manager will renew, and then there are no changes to plan design as well this year. The total budgeted cost for 2024 is $1,814,561. Additionally, there is a second year investment for the Pareto captive capital. That will be $42,636. It is 10% of the stop loss premium. It's how the captive gets to this. So for the newer council members specifically, we purchase stop loss through a captive, one, because the city size is smaller, so this helps to stabilize claims and stop loss premiums year over year. There were some pretty great contract provisions, a 30% rate cap and a no new laser provision in that to help save over time. On top of that, the Pareto captive offers several cost containment programs that we can build into the plan to help keep costs down over time. So lots of reasons why we chose that. This is a 2-year investment. Now Pareto will continue to roll this investment over, and they also invest that. If at any time the city leaves the captive, they get their entire investment back plus whatever interest is gained. So you are technically an owner of the captive, along with all the other captive members. So with that said, the recommendation is to approve the medical renewal for 2024 as presented. And then, do you want me to go through all these before you make? Yes, okay, great. On the dental, so we are currently using Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas for dental. The renewal was released at a 0.6% decrease below current. This was an estimated decrease of $568. In addition, we looked at proposals from Delta Dental of Kansas, and Delta Dental includes a unique program called Right Start for Kids in their dental plans. It's where kids 12 and under get 100% of services paid, or services paid at 100%. And so we requested that same option from Blue Cross and Blue Shield. They came back with that option at a 0.8%, which was an $800 increase. This is an estimated total of $104,052. The city of Andover would absorb this increase. The $800 cities or the employees' contributions would remain flat. And so the recommendation is to add the Right Start for Kid benefit to the Blue Cross Blue Shield plan as an enhancement to plan design for minimal increase. On the ancillary lines of coverage, so this is basic life, voluntary life, disability, and police and fire disability. 2 items for your consideration here. First, currently 50% of the total annual premium of these lines of coverages is divided amongst the employees. After we met with the city administration this year, the conclusion was made to cover 100% of the premium for all employees on the employer paid lines of coverage. So that's the basic life, short-term disability, and long-term disability. The total cost to the city is an estimated $28,800, which the city had already budgeted to pay 50%. So the remaining 50% or $14,400 can be absorbed within the reserves in the benefits fund. So the recommendation is to approve coverage of these lines to 100%. With that approval of the coverage to lines of 100%, we also looked at new carriers this year. So we placed these lines of coverage in 2021. They had a 3-year rate guarantee, and so that is ending on 6/30/2024 with New York Life. We looked at several carriers this year, and after reviewing the options, the recommendation is to move to the standard for 2024 for all ancillary lines of coverage. This is a 0.2% decrease from current, or roughly around $42. The New York Life renewal was an increase of $8,624. So the standard is going to keep things relatively flat for the city under a new 2-year rate guarantee. Additionally, the move to the standard eases the administration for HR specifically. There's a few nuances with New York Life related to billing. Standard has a much smoother process. And they are also the carrier for KPNF. And so there's some synergies there in aligning the standard with both. So the recommendation is to approve moving to the standard for these lines of coverage. On vision, we have Surancy, or we moved coverage to Surancy with Vision on March 1st of 2023. This plan is under rate guarantee until June 30th of 2025. And the recommendation is to renew Vision with Surancy until the end of the rate guarantee. The same for the flexible spending. This product is also with Surancy and was placed in March of 2023. It is under rate guarantee until June 30th of 2025. And the recommendation is to remain with Surancy until the end of the rate guarantee. On wellness and health risk management, the city has had a tobacco and non-tobacco rates for several years, and these will continue into 2024 plan year. Tobacco users will pay an additional 5% of total premium. And lastly, we have the Employee Assistance Program that is with MPAC. it received an increase this year of 4.2%. That was equated to about $151. The new cost of the program is $2.24 per employee per month, and that covers all employees at the city of Andover, and it is recommended to renew as is.
Thanks, Jill. Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
I know you mentioned FSA. Can you remind me, do we offer an HSA?
No, because currently we have 3 PPO plans, so we could not offer an HSA with those plans.
Are we looking to offer it the next time it
Yes.
comes up for renewal? Okay.
Anyone else?
I have a question, or maybe two. So you had said in here the recommendation to the budget is 99%. Can you explain that? Someone?
So because the renewal was a 1% increase, and so that's about $18,000. If we keep the employee and the employer contributions as they are today flat, that 1%, take 100 minus 1%, that's how we get to 99% of expected. A healthy reserve, and we talk about the reserve fund being very healthy. Healthy reserve fund is about 2.5 to 3 months of claims data, and the amount in the reserve is already more than enough to cover that for your total plan cost. So that's why we are comfortable with the recommendation of 99% of expected.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Can I make one clarifying point on that? It's really, when we're talking budget there, it's kind of what we're going to budget in revenue. Because in expenditures, we will have to budget a little extra just in case.
Okay. My last one here is on the volunteer life disability for police and fire. So that will probably help us with our keeping employees by paying that 100%. So that will probably help us on the salary review that we're getting ready to do. So that's a perk that I think the guy that met us last night probably should look at as well, because that'll be a perk for keeping fire and police, I believe. That's all I had.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else? All right, thank you very much.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the insurance renewals from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas for dental, surancy for vision, FSA, and COBRA services, and a new contract with the Standard for Life and Disability is presented.
Second.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. 12-1, ordinance to amend section 3-209 of city code. And Jenny is going to talk to us about this evening.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, as you are aware, we're going to be formally opening up the Heritage Park area, as well as having some events out at the Heritage Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of this week. And we knew, as we brought in this new multi-use development, that we were going to need to think about some things differently in terms of how various laws or rules are in place. One of those has to do with the consumption of alcohol. And so what we know, the plan for Heritage is to be very walkable, to have things like streets shut down from time to time, to have a little bit more of an entertainment district. Some of the tenants we anticipate over time will be more adult focused, offering alcoholic beverages. And so one of the things as we started to think about this opening was that on Thursday evening, when a private event's going to be happening, there's going to be alcohol in the Heritage Park. Your current code outlines which areas public consumption can happen outdoors, and the Heritage Park was not conceived of when that code was written, so that needed to be added. On Saturday, there will be a public event, and it's going to include some beer trucks parked on streets, as well as some street closures that you're going to hear about here in a moment. But your code actually outright did not allow you to have drinking in the streets in the city of Andover. So we needed to add the provision that when a special event is approved by the governing body by resolution, which you have a couple items coming up here, then that could be allowed. So we're having to modify some processes and policies in the city in order to be open to this new entertainment district. I don't think any of this is a surprise to any of you as we've imagined what the Heritage is going to look like as we roll this out, but just a little bit of housekeeping that needed to get taken care of before we get going with the Heritage in earnest later this week. Your city attorney was more than helpful as he has a lot of expertise in this area. When I called him slightly panicked 3 or 4 weeks ago going, what do? We have to make some changes and I don't know exactly what we're doing here. So I really appreciate his help with that. And the next rest of the items after you consider this code change will be covered by both Megan and Daniel Shapop, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I want to clear it up that our city's attorney is good at making laws about drinking in the street, not drinking in the street. So
Maybe a little bit of both.
He has vast experience that is helpful in many arenas. How about that?
So, and just to look back on our history, so when we did street closures for cul-de-sacs and stuff, we probably should have had something in because we were not there to watch the neighbors walk across the street with beer in their hand or something to that effect. So this is really something we needed to be doing anyway, correct?
Probably so. Mr. Mayor?
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great idea, event areas, and we were kind of thinking this years ago that the Heritage would probably have this, and so I'm glad that we're finally getting to that point. So good job, JT.
I do have a question,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Mayor. Jenny or JT, one of you two. I'm trying to read through here and look for it, but so does this mean does it have to be closed? So if they live in the Heritage and they want to walk across the park, can they have a beer in their hand, or does the road have to be closed for them to
It's a good question.
legally do that?
Technically, the road would not have to be closed, but to have permission to consume alcohol on a city street, the event would have to be approved by the city council.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So I do know that if you're going to sell liquor on the city street by catering van or otherwise, that the Department of Alcoholic and Beverage Control is pretty used to the street being closed for that activity. So I don't know how they'd feel about issuing a special event permit, for instance, to sell alcohol in a street that wasn't closed. That's my only caveat,
Okay.
Tim.
So they do have to request permission from the city council to serve liquor on the street.
Yeah, consuming liquor in the city streets is prohibited. And actually, with the exception of those areas listed in the ordinance, is illegal on public property. So for instance, you would not want to bring your beer to the city council meeting.
Well,
sorry.
so just to be clear, and I'm not sure if this same thing Tim was asking, but my mind's a little bit slow. At no time,
You need a drink?
yes, at no time will you be able to walk out of one of the establishments with the drink in your hand anyway, just to go to the park as on daily business.
So what I would say before you tonight, no.
Right.
Now, in the future, I think there are what you're referring to as an entertainment district. Those exist, and that may be something that we continue to move towards, but that is not what you're approving tonight. Tonight, you're saying that in these 5 locations, which the 5th added by this change is Heritage Park, including the Plaza at Heritage Park, and then the 6th item is any special event specifically approved by resolution by City of Andover, Kansas, meaning only this body can approve that. You're approving those things. The other thing I do want to point out, JT alluded to this, your city attorney alluded to this, ABC does require a state license for special events, and that license requires a map. So there will be a map that shows where this location is. I believe that's actually in your next couple items. You can see where that is. And that is required by the state to know where this is going to happen. So you can't just walk through town afterwards.
And so just so everybody knows in the public, when we do have, there's one establishment in town that every year has a deal where you can walk around the establishment. There is a special permit required. So it's not, we're not turning everybody loose just to have a good time. It requires a special permit every single time you do it. And so I just want to be very clear that the public understands that we're not just opening up the gates to, hey, enjoy life, right?
We can't just go to the liquor store, then go to the Heritage Park and walk around there with, a drink of 40, whatever it would be there.
But when the entertainment district is,
We don't have one right now, so we would
Right,
have to
yeah.
establish a
when
district,
that is
right?
established and a map is established with that in the future, you could, in that district.
You all right?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to be clear that there are some areas in this ordinance that you've always had that specifically allow the consumption of alcohol. And the only change actually to this ordinance is to add Heritage Park and Heritage Plaza. So the reason why you want to be careful about designating places that are always available for open drinking, quite frankly, is that it's one of the tools that law enforcement can use for a conglomeration of what in the old days we used to call a wino, right, on the bench. You can't have alcohol there. So we have some areas which are specifically allow alcohol. So the example of if you went to the liquor store and went down and was in an area that was specifically designated by ordinance, you could sit on the bench and drink a beer there and watch the sunset. However, never on a city street,
right?
Without, so you can't go for a walk. You can't, and the thing about the upcoming event that I think whoever presents will make clear is that there is going to be some walking about. And so we designated a special event, even if we hadn't closed the streets, to make it clear that from Heritage Plaza, you could go to the Skyloft, and it's kind of a all-encompassing deal. And some of those sidewalks are absolutely in street right of way. And that's why it approves that event.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve an ordinance amending Chapter 3, Article 2, Section 3-209, and Chapter 8, Article 3, Section 13-0304, of the Code of City of Andover, Kansas.
Second.
And I want to make it very clear to the public as well, the Heritage Square and the Heritage Square Park are two different entities, that the park is public domain. And there's a linear park going from the Heritage, what's the name of that park? Heritage Plaza Park to Douglas Street and Shea. So they are open to the public. That is our park as part of the city. And I've had the reason I've emphasized this because I've had a lot of questions about it. That is a city park. You can go sit on the steps down by the water and enjoy yourself. So when you get a chance, we let people know, please. All right. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. 12-2, special event resolution, May 2nd, 2024, Heritage. And Megan is going to talk to us about this.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So Mayor, to go off of your point, I think we do need to do some education on what the Heritage Park Plaza is, what the Skylife Apartments are. Jenny and I have talked about that. So we'll be talking about that on our Friday event. We'll be talking about that on social media, just so the public knows what are each of these different spots, because we know it is a little confusing. It's all still new to us as well as the public. So you got a little preview of this, but the Heritage Development Team is hosting a private dedication ceremony this Thursday from 5 to 6:30 p.m. Attendees will mingle in the Heritage Square, in the plaza at Heritage Park, in and outside the Skyloft's apartment, and then there is a map in your packet that you can see that area. Exclusive event services will be the vendor providing the alcoholic beverages pertaining to this request. The dedication ceremony will take place at 5 p.m. and then wine and hors d'oeuvres will be served at 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. This event is not open to the public, so it is by invitation only. But tonight we are just asking your permission for the consumption of alcohol in Heritage Square, including the Skyloft's building and the plaza at Heritage Park on Thursday, May 2nd. We do have Kurt Yao here in attendance if you have any questions specifically about this event.
You have anything you'd like to share, sir?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the consumption of alcohol in Heritage Square, including the Skylofts building and the plaza at Heritage Park on Thursday, May 2nd, 2024, from 5 to 6:30 PM. Seems kind of early, but okay.
Can I get a
Second.
second? Thank you, Mike. Any further questions or discussion?
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Heritage Road closures and vending and requests. And Daniel Shea Paul is going to talk to us about this.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For your consideration on 12/3 is for this Sunday. I hate to correct you, Jenny, not Saturday. On Sunday, our friends Randy Miller and the Kansas Corvette Club are going to be bringing the Show and Shine Blitz to the Heritage Square area. This is the Corvette show that was in Central Park last year, you might remember. So we are asking for a road closure noted on your map. These roads are new, so we went over the actual intersections multiple times to make sure we got it right, but we're asking for the closure of Founders from Sunset east to Homestead. That's your east-west run there. And then Heritage Way would be closed from Willowbrook up at the north end down south to Frontier. That's the closure. It has been reviewed by our public safety departments, police and fire. The closure is agreeable to them with several accommodations. The most important being that the event organizers would maintain for emergency vehicles only a full perimeter of access around the Skyloft structure. Sharon Van Horn and Taylor Clark we have been working with them on organizing the event. So in this request is the closure previously described, and then the sale of goods and services in the Heritage Park Plaza, which is obviously adjacent to this closure, from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Sunday the 5th. The actual event runs 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And I can try to answer any questions if you might have them.
I don't really have a question. I have a statement just to know that I want everyone to know that these gentlemen it's a family environment. Even though there will be a beverage truck there and food truck there, it's for the families, and they've reached out to fire and police and first responders to let them know their intentions are to be a peaceful crowd, and they're doing everything in their power to keep silliness from happening. Is the best way I know how to say it.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I do have a comment as well. It's the same club that was in here in Central Park. I mean, of course I had my kids under lock and key, next to me. My two boys, when they wanted to touch a car, I was, yanking them away from the car. But a lot of the folks that are putting a car in were like, do your kids want to get in? And I'm like, whoa. I'm gonna have to have you sign a release or something if you want these little guys getting in it. So definitely family oriented. They some of them welcome people to sit in the car, or kids. So it was an awesome time. So I can't wait for this. It's gonna be pretty cool.
All right. Can I get a motion?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve the closure of Heritage Way from Willowbrook South to Frontier and Founders Parkway from Sunset East to Homestead, as well as the sale of goods and services in the Heritage Park Plaza from 7 a.m. until 2 p.m. on May 5th, 2024.
Anybody?
Second.
I do have one more comment. I want to thank city staff and the governing body and some of the governing body that was here before, that this would not be realized without a whole lot of people. A whole lot of people that's before us, before I was mayor, have been working on this for a long time. And this is the first of many, many, many good things to be at the Heritage Park Plaza or Plaza Park, whatever you want to say it.
Park Plaza.
It's a start of a lot of things, and it took a lot of people a lot of years to make this realized. So I want to thank everybody that's been involved in it for all this time. Mayor Lawrence, C.R. Nelson was very adamant about seeing this realized too. So I just want to say thank you to those folks as well. Anyone, any further questions or conversation?
I just have one thing, Mayor. Could we get these added to our calendars just as a reminder? Okay, thank you.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Special event resolution, May 5.
We're just taking turns up here. So 4th Annual Show and Shine Car Show will take place again Sunday, May 5th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. The selling and consumption of alcohol will occur within the closed streets, Founders Parkway and Heritage Way, as well as the plaza at Heritage Park and inside the Skyloft building. Again, that map for this request is in your packet. This event will include a car show, music, food, and more. Again, exclusive event services will be the vendor providing the alcohol pertaining to this request. And this event is presented by the Heartbeat of Kansas Corvette Club and is open to the public to attend. It's a free event, just as it has been in the past. They've just added some new things to it this year. So we are asking for your permission to approve the selling and consumption of alcohol at the Heritage Square, including the Skylofts building, the plaza at Heritage Park, and on and along Founders Parkway and Heritage Way on Sunday, May 5th. Kurt, still here in the audience if you have any questions.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the selling and consumption of alcohol at the Heritage Square, including the Skyloft Building, the Plaza at Heritage Park, and on and along Founders Parkway and Heritage Way on Sunday, May 5th, 2024, from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m.
Second.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you for being here, Mr. Yao.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I just have one question, and maybe it's for
Too late.
Chief Buck. Well, I'm going to ask it anyway. So is that like, so when we're, just because it's new as far as the resolution goes, but is that like a hard stop at 2 p.m.? I mean, as far as if I've purchased the drink at, whatever, is that now that we've put this in, is it 2 p.m. then it needs to be all thrown away kind of thing?
Should be. I mean, that's.
Okay.
Depends on the office, and it's not just us. You got to think, ABC could be out there.
Oh, yeah.
And they are probably going to be out there, would be my assumption.
Really?
On the
Okay.
agents, yeah, because I know they check different restaurants in town that have liquor. I meet with a couple of agents every once in a while, so wouldn't doubt it. Usually they're the ones that catch them.
Seen one today, matter of fact, now that you mentioned that.
Really?
Mhm. I was drinking iced tea, but
I don't know if,
third, continued item, Yorktown Parkway concept, Central Avenue, 13th Street, 13-1 Yorktown Parkway concept. Man, I repeated that again. And Jolene's going to talk to us about this evening.
Good evening, Mayor and governing body. This is a continuation from your last council meeting and also a continuation of our discussion last night at the workshop. Before you are the concepts that were discussed and presented by Tim Azure of PEC. And per our discussion, they are here tonight for you to formally approve. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them at this time.
Mr. Mayor, I have one item. The 3-lane typical BCCC, that is only going to be at the community college, correct? And do we know about how long that length is, or is that to be determined?
That 3-lane with the center turn lane section would be continuous from 13th Street down to Commerce Street.
Okay, so that's a pretty far area.
Yes, there are 2 driveways into the college in that quarter of a mile, as well as the street intersection at 13th and at Commerce. So it made it difficult to try to start and stop medians that many times in a quarter of a mile. By the time you do the lane tapers, it wouldn't have been much of a median.
Okay, so that's really just stacking, turning in left, going west into the college. Will there be a decel lane coming off of 13th into those areas, or it's just going to stack in the street?
We don't have a decel lane at this time. The traffic engineering doesn't warrant those improvements yet, but you'll remember from that traffic study that the future condition could warrant improvements to the intersection that might include a traffic signal also.
Okay, and is that something that they will project and add now, or?
That's something
Or they'll
we'll
have to be-
react to as traffic volumes increase.
Okay, and will we be responsible for that, or will the college when more traffic is coming in there?
That would be a public improvement.
Okay.
So is the driveway, they've got driveways built in already. So is the driveway back by the very clear up, back by Commerce where they do the, oh my goodness, the crafts and stuff, the framing of houses and what have you? Is that driveway going to be on Commerce? Is it not going to be realized?
It isn't connected at this point. We think as Commerce is developed, that the college might change their attitude a little bit on those driveways to Commerce Street.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the conceptual plan for the Yorktown Parkway improvements from Central Avenue to 13th Street.
Second, Hamilton. And I want to take a second to thank the city staff for all their hard work in acquiring all that land that we had to get a hold of to be able to actually complete this project. I know it's taken a lot longer than we thought it might, and I know there's been a lot of time and effort that went into making this possible and being able to get it the width that we wanted to have on both sides. So,
And Lance Onstadt spent, I think, a lot of time writing to get the base grant money. So there was a lot of people involved in making this happen. And so again, it just shows how well we work together. So it's a good thing. So, all right, any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. 14-1, relocate sewer line for KDOT/Kellogg project. And Rick's going to talk to us about this evening.
Mr. Mayor and Council, as the US 54 project becomes more of a reality and is nearing, we need to do some relocation of some sewer lines that are in conflict with the expansion project in phase one. We're at the point now where the projected right of way and acquisitions are, I think, pretty well established. They just haven't all happened, or most of them have not happened yet, but we feel comfortable that we can go ahead and enter into a contract with an engineering firm, and in this case it'd be PEC, to do the design work for those relocations. Obviously, we would not go out for bid on that work until the relocations have happened, because we need those to take place so we have the right of way to put the sewer line in too, as we move those out of the conflicts. The water portion that is in there will be tied with the actual project, because that work really needs to time up with Wichita. Wichita was rolling the water into the KDOT project. So we opted to just join into that, because we really can't move ours until they move theirs, because that's where we get our water. It ties in there. So we're going to coordinate with them on that, and they'll be part of the 54 actual project, and they'll do that during the actual construction. But the sewer doesn't tie in with anyone else. It's strictly ours, and we need to get it moved, and KDOT would obviously like it moved in advance. So PEC's contract of $48,350 is in line with what their engineering contract states for their fees for design work outside of the city engineer contract. This does include much of the contract administration, but it does not include our construction administration, but it does not include the on-site inspection. After the plans have been developed and prior to bidding, we would make a decision and get a pricing on that if we wanted to move forward with somebody to do the on-site inspection instead of on staff. Probably would opt for that, but we would bring a separate agreement for that later at that time. We'd like to have the design done before we actually come to that dollar amount. Yeah, I'm happy to stand for any questions if anybody has any about this.
Mr. Mayor, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Rick, is there any upsizing in this, or are we going to keep the same size, or will that be determined in the design?
So this line is already one of our interceptor lines, so it's already upsized. And if you recall, we did a sewer master plan that included a comprehensive study of our system, and the capacity on that line is plenty. We don't have any need to upsize it. We had one piece we did upsize down about 5 years ago. Some of you may remember this closer to the plant, and we relined it or replaced it. But this is the sizing is not an issue. We wouldn't probably touch this if it wasn't for the work and taking place and it being in conflict with the sewer, with the roadway.
Okay. The new apartment system is tying into this line, near this line?
Yeah, it would flow into this line.
Okay. All right. I'm sure that's already been projected as well.
Yeah, this line has plenty of capacity.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anyone else? Can I get a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve I move to approve I move to approve the work order number 2420 for engineering services with Professional Engineering Consultants, PA, Wichita, Kansas, in the amount of $48,350.
Second, Hamilton.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. 15-1 Heritage Mixed Use Streetscape Change Order 10. And Les will talk to us about this.
Mr. Mayor and Council, as we wrapped up the Heritage Streetscape project, we realized that there were a couple of areas that needed some attention. One was a block seat wall at street level at the Plaza Park that, although it meets the requirements for the need for a handrail, we just felt that it was better to be safe and add a handrail because the drop off on the backside was substantial, and we think there's going to be a lot of public in that area. The other was to add landscaping back to the north side of Founders Parkway between Heritage Street and Homestead Street. As we looked at that, it was value engineered out because there was no building adjacent to it and there's future construction there. But it just looked out of place to have a block of street in that developed landscaped area that was left unlandscaped, unirrigated, no trees, no bushes. So we're here tonight looking for a change order to add that bit of landscaping as well as that guardrail.
Any questions?
Is this the only change order? I mean, do we know or anticipate any more change orders?
The work is virtually complete. These are about two of the only items left to complete on the project. We've done the final inspection, and that's when we discussed this need for some additions.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the Key Construction Heritage Mixed Use First Streetscapes Change Order 10.
Second, Tim.
And just so I'm clear, Les, that's on the very south end by where they're calling Building 1.
It's actually at the north side of Founders Parkway, across the street from the mixed-use building.
Okay, thank you. I was a little bit confused, which is just normal. 15-2 change order cottages at Cornerstone. And Rick is going to talk to us about that.
We didn't
Oh,
vote.
I'm sorry. Oh, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Now, Rick will talk to us about change order cottages at Cornerstone.
So before you tonight is a change order to install a small section of retaining wall, some fill to keep the water from the drainage in the Andover Road section and not come into the addition portion, and a small short section of drainage pipe. The engineer is happens to be in the room, has reviewed this and recommended approval. Staff has reviewed it and is also recommending approval. I would comment that this is a currently 100% petition project, and all costs associated with this would be assessed back to the platted lots as part of the assessment district. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Rick, I do have a question in regards to, just because I drive by it daily. Where the ditch comes up to Cornerstone Parkway, there's 2 ditches there now. Why do we have 2 ditches there now? As far as, is one of them gonna, I mean, is it eventually gonna be moved over to one ditch? It seems like maybe the lighting and utilities is like in the middle of the 2 ditches. Can you speak to that, Jason?
Sure can.
Thank you.
Good evening. Yes, you're correct in your observation. There are 2 ditches there. One serves the Andover Road right away. The other one is actually slightly lower at the north end where it begins, and it serves the internal drainage for the cottages themselves. So what we did is we recognized that in a 100-year flood event, there was the potential for some of those waters to mix. We think most of the water, based on our modeling, is going to go west down Cornerstone Parkway. But there's basically the half-mile north of Cornerstone Parkway, that 50 feet from the center line to the property line. It's kind of unique. That portion all drains to Cornerstone Parkway and has the potential to jump over the street and go south. Like I said, generally it would more than likely go west based on our modeling. But we are just making the extra step because those homes, if you look at that closely, you'll notice they're a little bit below. One ditch is a little bit lower than the other. By the time they get down to the south end where the pond is, they're the same, but that's what that's for. And eventually, when it becomes an urban section on Andover Road, that drainage will probably be turned in or put in storm sewer, perhaps. Just depends on how the road is designed in the future.
And then Jason, since you're here and available, is this drainage going to add any issues to the way the water comes underneath Andover Road down closer to the previous Butler County Extension building?
No, there shouldn't be any difference in the way it operates today. The Andover Road right away enters the box culvert, and then everything internal of the project has to go through the detention and then exits that weir that you've seen there from the street.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to let the public know that what we have on the screen is the previous mixed use the change order. So just in case anyone was looking at it on TV, that they knew that this was not the right one. So.
Those are not in the slide presentation, what you're looking for. They are on your agenda packet, some of the drawings.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the change order number 1 to the cottages at Cornerstone Water Distribution System Sanitary Sewer and Paving and Incidental Drainage Project with Noah Construction Company Incorporated, Goddard, Kansas, in the amount of $22,192.
Second.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, Jason. 16-1 US 54-400 annexation. And Les is going to talk to us about this evening.
Mr. Mayor and council, you remember community development staff was tasked with cleaning up some of the right-of-ways, particularly street right-of-ways around the city that had intermittent city property, county property, which made it difficult in some cases for public works maintenance and in other cases for law enforcement. This latest annexation tonight is US 54 to just clean up the section from 159th Street over to Prairie Creek Road such that all of the highway right-of-way is in the city limits for law enforcement purposes. It doesn't change any responsibilities as to the maintenance of the highway. It's strictly just a cleanup for law enforcement.
All right. Any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I do. Les, on the one that's provided in the packet, the dotted lines are the current city limits. I guess I'm just confused what happens over on by McCandless.
Over at McCandless, there is a segment that is not in the city. There's a small segment over by Onewood on the south side that's not in the city. It's just a real hodgepodge of little segments, generally no more than half of the width of the road at any given place. So you can imagine the confusion with law enforcement over whose jurisdiction the road is.
And McCandless is still outside the city limits, right?
The properties on McCandless Street south of the highway aren't in the city. They're on our list of annexations in the future.
Anyone else? Can I get a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance annexing the US 54-400 right-of-way from 159th Street to Prairie Creek Road in the corporate limits of the city of Andover.
Second, Barry.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. South Andover Road maintenance, and Rick will talk to us about that as well.
So Butler County Public Works approached city staff a little while ago, not terribly long ago, about some work that they had decided they were going to actually be able to fund this year. And they were going to go from generally out the roundabout to on into Andover with widening section of pavement by 3 feet and then re-gravel the shoulder. As part of the project, they were going to come back and they're going to heat scarify the surface, and then in the spring they will come back and do a mastic sealing over the top of that and reapply pavement markings. They, it appeared to them it didn't seem to make much sense to come up there then stop right at basically the southwest 130th, I guess, and stop that project, and we'd have that little bit of section that's inside the city, kind of adjacent to Flint Hills, that would be unimproved as far as that shoulder width and the shoulder. They approached the city about 2 weeks ago what the cost would be and if we participate in their cost share of that. They are doing some of the work, a pretty good portion of the work if you've been down there and seen it themselves. And they're not asking for the city participating in any of their equipment time or labor costs. It's strictly what their expenses are. So what they are paying for materials and contractors directly related. And it's basically, they're asking for us to pay for a share of that based on the length and total project length. I felt like it was important enough to go ahead and do that. It'll reset the clock on that road. For a while, that mastic seal after the heat scarify and the repavement marking will buy some time. They are optimistic that sometime down the road there will be a project to extend that into a 4-lane, and they feel that this work will extend the life of that pavement until such time. We did not necessarily feel like we could fund it out of the street improvement fund. As many of you are aware, that fund is being taxed a little bit right now. However, the special highway fund is got substantial enough funds in it that we're able to recommend using that money with the intent that should some things settle out in the special or in the street improvement fund, it would be reimbursed for that so that we could continue to use those funds for large equipment purchases in the future and offset operating costs of the street department. As many of you are probably aware, the street department's majority of their operating cost comes from the special highway fund. A small portion actually comes from the general fund portion of the city tax. The staff is recommending approval of that. I guess I would say that we are comfortable enough that should the street improvement fund not be able to reimburse the special highway fund, we can absorb it if we need to. We feel it's important enough to try and tie this work together. It's something that the previous county engineer talked about trying to coordinate work sometimes and take advantages of when somebody's coming up in one store stop. Sometimes it's better to just go extend that work, either if it's up to the next half mile or mile, or whatever, just to make it work. So staff is recommending approval of this. This is a little bit of a thrown at us a little bit last minute, but as some of you may be aware, the Butler County Public Works has changed directors and the Public Works, and there was some delays in getting some stuff and information back and forth. But so I apologize for the short notice because they're actually out there working right now. But well, they were earlier today, I guess, before the rain. But if anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to try to answer it.
Maybe just a lay question, Mr. Mayor. So we're just essentially widening this road, or we, or Butler County, however you want to word it, widening it 6 feet? Am I understanding that right?
3 feet each side. And part of that is, and I actually happened to witness it one time when I was driving this section of road. It was a younger driver, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I was always younger drivers that do this. But as the gravel, and I've noticed that, the gravel gets offset on that roadway. And as somebody's traveling down that road, especially when you get in a higher rate of speed and their tire gets off the side, there's sometimes the urge to panic, overreact, overcorrect. And I actually witnessed a rollover. I was falling right behind the person. I saw him overcorrect, swerve, and do a rollover. So that widening it by the 3 feet keeps that rock ledge a little further. It'll be about 3 feet, and I'm guessing 6 inches off that line. So there's just less likelihood of that happening. So it was a little bit of a safety item to do. Also, if you've been driving and somebody does get their tire off into that gravel and you're driving behind them, you won't appreciate it much because your paint will suffer some. So it also helps with that too.
So I hear it's more public safety than anything. It's not just a convenience to add 6 feet to the road, right?
They're not doing it for convenience. You're correct. They're doing that for safety and for ease of maintenance. It's easier to maintain that rock shoulder and people aren't driving off of it all the time. It stays more level and stays more in line with the pavement surface. And then obviously the seal, the mastic seal, after the re-scarify, the heat scarify on it will actually extend the life of the surface of the treatment. It's a surface treatment to extend the life of the pavement too.
Thanks, Rick.
So I got a question that's more along the lines of less. So they're always talking about, since I've been mayor, 3 or 4 different times they've talked about developing that right there. Is there anything in the near future that they'd want to south of Flint Hills National?
We've got the Southern Hills subdivision that is in the platting process for that plus or minus 150 acres south of 130th on the east side of Andover Road. It's in the pipeline for development in the very near future. The property on the west side of Andover Road, south of 130th Street, was in a planned unit development. That developer abandoned the PUD, and the property was bought by a person who intends to build a house in the dead center of it and just wait for the right time for development. So
And that's on the, I'm sorry, that's on the east side?
on the west side of the
South or
river.
west, I think.
West.
So my question is, where I'm going is there, are we gonna put this road in and then have to do a turning lane in the near future?
So you can go ahead, or basically, when they go to develop that subdivision, we would probably require a turn lane or a decel lane there on that turn. But this 3-foot widening is really not going to affect that much.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at.
And it'd be just that portion of it.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we've asked the developer's engineer to give us a traffic report on that scenario. And he's concluded that the traffic volumes aren't high enough to warrant full left turn lanes or accel lanes
Okay.
with the Southern Hills development. So it's not likely in the foreseeable future.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I do have one question. Rick, is that part of Butler, well, we call it Andover Road. We own, I mean, that's in city limits, correct?
Correct. In actuality, they were going to go to 130th
Okay.
regardless of. And if you can see on the map, the part that's highlighted is actually already in the city limits. So they were going to go, they weren't going to stop a half mile short.
Okay.
And, just stop right there. They were going to go ahead and go to at least the intersection. In full disclosure, I kind of think that Butler County told them just go ahead, because on the hopes that we would participate and because they're in the process and they didn't want to affect the flow of the project. And they were making pretty good progress and our timing just didn't line up in time.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Can I get a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
move to authorize the reimbursement of up to $123,113.82 to Butler County for roadway maintenance on South Andover Road.
Second, Hamilton.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Public Works and Utility, 18-1 purchase of skid steer. And Rick will talk to us about this.
In the street budget for 2024 was funds to purchase a new skid steer. We had budgeted 80,000. First, I'd like to comment that it's kind of nice when we actually go out and we go to acquire something that it didn't go up much from what we thought. We've gotten so used to getting prices on things and then say, okay, now we're going to go try to buy it in maybe 18 months. What's it going to be? And we estimate it up. And this time it really didn't climb at all. So that's good news. I would also say that we tried something a little different. This was not a bid. This was a request for proposals, and we scored this purchase based on a matrix that included items such as the compliance with the specs, the price, operator rating, and delivery dates. And they were weighted and scored in the, you could write your specs to where you get everything you want, and then kick everyone out. And sometimes you end up with one, and then maybe a few of those things that were in the specs really weren't too critical. And sometimes we all have heard the joke about like flying in a government purchase lowest bid plane, so we're trying to find a way to be able to purchase and quantify what is the best piece of equipment for the job that we're asking it to do. And it includes items such as compliance specifications, price, operator rating, delivery date. So this is our first go at this. We staff kind of developed this, and you will see some of these going forward. The point scales will vary based on the piece of equipment and what we're asking that equipment to do or how specialized that equipment is. We feel like, in this particular case, the highest score and the lowest price was pretty much the same. There was one piece of equipment that scored lower than or a price lower than White Star's price, but it was missed a couple items on the specifications. So if we would have done our old method, we probably would end up buying the same piece of equipment. However, this does give our operators, the people using the equipment, the opportunity to have a little bit of say, and they get in there. And in this particular case, in the street department, I believe every person rated it except for Vern. He let this whole staff rate it. Those scores were averaged out to give it a score, operator score for that equipment. And that was one of the factors in this piece. This happens to be a Bobcat, which the current piece of equipment is a Bobcat. So all the attachments, there's not really any questions whether attachments will be work on this new ones without a lot of retrofitting. There shouldn't be any of that. And I would say that, we did get some decent pricing for trade-in on it, but staff really wanted to retain the existing unit as we go in. And again, as we've talked about our maintenance budget and some of the lack of some of the maintenance projects we've done recently, we're doing a little more aggressive this summer. Be doing a little more aggressive in-house maintenance on some crack repairs and such, and having two pieces of equipment so you can have one that'll do the routing or the cutting, slot cutting of a crack repair, and the other piece can be doing the excavation out. They can kind of speed the process up, and so they can get a lot more work done in the day. And then it can also serve as a backup. And then in the winter time, or when they're not actually doing active crack repairs, the park department can use it because their skid steers, we're probably due to purple wave it. It's seen its time. So it will be there for them to use on a very common basis. And then definitely during the winter, because that skid steer that they have now does not have a cab on it. So this existing one that we have has a cab on it, heater, such, and they can use it to plow snow and such is what they do now. So they'll appreciate that, I'm sure. So if anyone has any questions about the process or anything along that lines, I'd be more happy to try to answer.
Yes, sir.
I love the process. I mean, I feel good about it. I guess my only question to you mentioned that it would change in the future depending on the equipment. I feel like for the most fairness of the matrix, why would it change in the future?
So for example, let's say we had a piece of equipment that is super, super, super important to us to have, but the existing unit's in a condition of failure or something along that lines. We might put a little more weight on that delivery date. Some of these times we see some delivery dates is quite a long ways out. Or let's say we're not so concerned about the specifications because there's a lot of units out there that are very similar, but some of the nuances of them might not be that big a deal. So price may become a little bit more of a factor, but generally speaking, it's going to be similar to this. Or if it's a kind of a unique piece of equipment that's maybe a little harder to operate, we may put more weight on the operator rating. So, I don't know. I can't give you any prime example of, particular piece of equipment and why it would change. And just, we've talked about the potential to change some of the weighting scores based on what those pieces of equipment are and the conditions around it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I guess in the back of my head, I'm just like, okay, I feel like it should be plug and play. We should be able to do, if we're going to have a matrix or, the Hay method, a methodology doing it, I feel like we should be able to plug it in no matter what, and it should be able to work for whatever piece we're doing. But it's something to think about in the future. I definitely like this and like where you guys started with this and appreciate it. So and the matrix outline here is easy to read. So I definitely like it. I just, moving forward, maybe.
Like I said, the biggest thing we talked about, well, sometimes where maybe it's because on this particular one, delivery date was 5% of the total score. We probably would have had that higher on the front end loader because it's pretty critical. And the other one was nearing its time. And if somebody would have walked in and had the lowest price and met the specs, but had a year out delivery date, that could have been an issue for us.
Mr. Mayor, I have
Yes, sir.
comments. Just recently, Paul and I went to a chamber forum event where Wichita Mayor Lily Wu was the main speaker. And this is one of the things that she is bringing new to the city. And I like that process that you're doing this, because they're going to try, not everything, I think that's what she was getting to, was on some things, they're going to get rid of the low bidder and go with the best product. So it's a new idea, not new, but it's new to a lot of cities. And you do the matrix or whatever, and you get the best bang for your buck, not the low bid. And sometimes, low bids, don't work. I've seen that a lot, but I think this is a good process, and that's one thing that Mayor Wu's pushing as well.
And I think we kind of did that with, may I?
Go ahead.
I think we kind of did that where Brian Wall, that runs the waste treatment plant, chooses to go with he don't need the professional cut that we need at city parks or at the golf course so I know he picked a lower price just because he didn't need the custom cut or something like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think in that particular case, his specs were written around that, and that's, why he generated. One of the reasons why I wanted the matrix, though, is from a staff standpoint, setting at a public meeting and not having some sort of data-driven way to say this is what we're picking, and letting all those that are submitting proposals know how we're going to score it, kind of put staff in a standpoint. Some felt like we might put staff in the point where we're having to make recommendations based on some things that are really hard to quantify other than we know, and instead of just asking you guys to blindly follow staff's recommendation, we wanted to give you guys ability to see our thought process and how we ended up basically in that recommendation, and also give the prospective proposals, those companies submitting the proposals, know. And so they all were given the scoring matrix. They all were, given the opportunity to do the demo and such and participate in the process. And I was thinking we might see a few drop out because of that, but we really didn't. So I guess that's some good news.
I like the idea of letting the people that are using it have some say in what they're getting. Tony, you have anything you'd like to add? No? Okay.
Vern? Yeah.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve the purchase of the skid steer loader from White Star Machinery, Wichita, Kansas, in the amount of $63,055.61.
Second.
Who got it?
It doesn't matter.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Pavement condition survey. And Rick's gonna educate us on this as well.
Mr. Mayor and Council, and some of you were on the council back in 2019 when we retained IMS to do our initial pavement management study. For those of you, I'll give you a quick education on it or example or description of what they do, but they have a pretty high-tech piece of equipment and like a van that drives around, and it uses LiDAR and all kinds of sensors to capture and rate the streets. And it gives it a computer-based model. It actually works on, I believe it's the Pazer system, but the APWA method of rating streets. What I like about this, when I was first out of school and working in the engineering department in Wellington, Kansas, we used to rate streets using the same system, but it was individuals that did it. And then we would blind rate over somebody else, and you couldn't ever match the same score. And in fact, if you did enough streets and you went back and did a street over, sometimes you come up with a different score. It's just really hard when you're doing that to be objective. As you start seeing bad streets and bad streets and bad streets, all of a sudden you see one that's not quite so bad. It looks really good. So this is a method to give us a really good snapshot in time of what our payments are conditions are. The other thing is I would comment that by us doing it over and, probably not this time, maybe the next time we do this, we will continue to refine the degradation curve because pavement does not deteriorate everywhere exactly the same. You got a lot of variations in there. You got temperature variations, you got soil variations, you got traffic variations. So once you've done that street a few times and you can kind of get an idea based on volume and such, we can further define that degradation curve, which we have the ability to model inside of our Cartograph system, our asset management software. But we're requesting to go back and redo this. It's a little bit cheaper since they've already done it once. They've got a lot of the history in there. We get a little bit of discount. Derby is, I don't know where they're at with it right now, if they're going to council or already went to council. But Derby, like last time, was going to redo their streets when we did ours. So we're kind of partnering to save a little bit in mobilization costs. It's not a ton of money, but a little bit helps. And go through and get our streets ready again so we can then continue to put this into our asset management software, continue to model it. So as we start getting funds to spend on some pavement maintenance, we can start putting that in and run our what if scenarios and try to get the best method and best timing of maintenance on our pavements for the citizens of Andover. If anyone has any questions or comments, I'd be happy to answer them.
So is this the same thing, Rick? I know you've worked very hard on this since you've been here about not doing roads that aren't quite ready to be done. And is that part of the?
So, yeah. So with this data and then with our software package we have, we can model streets, and there's times when you should maintenance streets earlier. It's cheaper. And then there's like this curve point when it gets down to a certain point. Honestly, the software a lot of time kicks it out and says, you just might as well wait for total failure, because trying to do anything here is so expensive that you can get another 5-10 years out of it, letting it go. And sometimes the residents don't like that because it means they're going to have a little bit of a less street for a little while, but let it get closer to total failure, because the fix is total reconstruction at that point. But your crack sealing is probably your best bang for your buck there is. And then your surface sealing, which we do an HA5 around here. Last year we did a pressure pave, or 2 years ago we did some pressure pave. Those are variations of a surface seal. And then you get into your mill and overlay. And if you look on, I'm talking strictly on asphalt streets, but as you look on the curve, as you start curving down in your PCI, and it's on a 0 to 100 score is the system we use. As you start getting into the 70s and down in that area, that's when a lot of times we pull the trigger on a thin mill and overlay, or an overlay, depending on the conditions. That'll reset you back up, but if you have the funding available and you can get to them, sometimes by just doing a seal earlier, that extends that before you have to do that more expensive mill and overlay. But once you get past that mill and overlay, then you start getting into thick mill and overlays, and then you start getting into full depth construction. And we have some charts I probably shared with some of you before, that the examples on cost, and it just goes up. But there is optimum times for certain types of items. Now, does that mean you just spend your money on all your good streets and you ignore all the other ones? So no, you don't. And in fact, back in 2020, when we presented the study the last time, we recommended going in and doing a lot of streets, and we did a lot of those streets, and we have plans to do more of those streets that the system, quite frankly, told us you probably shouldn't go ahead and do. You just should let them go ahead and fall a little further apart and get them when they get down in the 10 rating, because you can, instead of spending $75 a square yard, you can go spend $2 a square yard and keep those good streets good. Now, there is an economics of fairness in there too that comes into play. And with any model, there's always the human element that has to look at the model and say, okay, we know this street's a little more important, say end of a road. We want to keep that street looking a little nicer. So you tweak the model, obviously, but as a general answer, the model will give you data to use, and that gets tweaked a little bit you're still trying to optimize, but with that understanding of the human element of what is important to the community too, and I think in Andover, what's important to the community is not letting roads completely fail and get totally horrible. We'd like to get to those as funding is available.
I
Mr.
just
Mayor.
want to add one thing. It has nothing to do with the blacktops and stuff, but I've lived in my neighborhood for 30 years and I reached out and told Vern this. I've never seen, the road Boylan look better ever. Now, the last 4 days might have changed that, but when they were done, that road has never, the dirt roads in my neighborhood have never looked better in 30 years. So I let Vern know in light of this is Appreciation Week, and it's, I just think we can't let them know how well they're doing.
Well, I guess I'll take the opportunity to share some good news that we found out, I think it was yesterday, that, so after the winter storms, as you remember, it got so cold and it stayed so cold, and then the freeze-thaw cycles and such, just totally ruined all the rock. It wasn't just Andover, it was everywhere in the county too. And so we spent a considerable amount of staff time hauling rock because we couldn't even get it hauled in because all the haulers were booked. We couldn't even get one if we wanted one, so we had to haul it ourselves and grade the roads and repair those roads. And we spent about $84,000 on that. Now, that includes our equipment time and operator time. We spent somewhere around $20-some thousand on actual rock itself. We know all this because we tracked it all inside our car graph, which here's where I'm getting to. The great advantage of that is because we tracked all that, we were mostly on the way done, and the Kansas Department of Emergency Management walked into my office one day and said, "Hey, we think we might be able to get a state declaration. Do you have any data on how much it's cost you how much money you spent on these roads?" And I said, "Well, yes, we do." And click, here you go. Here's a report. And they use that report along with some others to get it to this in front of the governor. Governor sent it on up, and I believe it was President Biden approved it as emergency declaration, so FEMA. So we are well positioned now to submit for reimbursement and get that money back.
Nice.
Including our labor costs and our equipment time costs.
All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I just want to piggyback off of what you said, but Rick, I appreciate the explanation because I think a lot of times just the average citizen can question the cost of a study or another study to look at the roads or the condition. And I think it's extremely important to understand, everything that goes into that. And I know that I've had some individual people asking me about their roads, and this really helps me to understand and recognize the great lengths that you guys go to make really good decisions on, where you're spending the money at. So much appreciated.
Thank
you. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
So this will be the second time that we've used IMS then for the street study. And then will you be looking forward to the results as far as what happened in the stuff from the study in 2019 versus now? Do you think I feel like we've done a good job with the roads. How do you anticipate this study coming in?
Yeah, I'm very eager to see the results. I know we got a lot of work done. We did kind of pump the brakes on all the work last year and this year's. So we had a 5-year plan. We got basically 3 years of it completed. Our city of Andover started in great shape. Our roads have always been in pretty good shape. We had what they call backlog was very low, which is those roads that are like really bad shape that need to be fixed. We whittled away on some of those. We had some plans to do a few more, but we didn't quite get there. But I'm very excited to see those results and see how we tracked and how we're doing and where we can. I'm sure there'll be areas where we can improve. But I am very optimistic that we should see some pretty decent results. Maybe not as good as if we would be able to maintain our 5-year plan. I know where we wanted to be, which was in pretty good, really good shape. I don't know that we're going to get quite to where we wanted to be, only going through about 3/5 of the budget that we had planned on.
And this study doesn't do anything they don't look at the gravel roads. Is that correct?
Right. Gravel roads, the condition of those is based on, as soon as you grade them, it changes. So it does look at the concrete roads, and it does give us recommendations on those too. Obviously, the concrete roads are a little more maintenance-free, so to speak. When you do go to maintenance, sometimes they're a little more intense, but we will have some maintenance projects on some concrete roads coming in the future. But at this point in time, almost all of the work that was really in that original 5-year plan was asphalt roads.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the pavement management study by IMS Information Management Services, Largo, Florida, in the amount of $20,938.
Second, Barry.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. 20-20.1 Andover Fire Rescue Wildland Gear Grant purchases. Man, that's a mouthful right there, brother.
You're welcome. Mr. Mayor and Council, thank you. First of all, Mr. Mayor, I apologize for my tardiness. It was an interesting evening. Thank you for letting me share the good news. We received grant funding for Wildland Gear. So not only is it Wildland Gear, which I titled it, it's also dual certified, so it's helps us in rescue calls as well. So I'm also asking for you to have my back on this a little bit because I apologize for my mistake. When we got the grant, I was excited and I came to city administration and said, we have a grant and I recommend moving forward. And we should be within purchasing policy. We're good to go because we only have a 10% match, $3,450 out of a $34,500 purchase. Well, as we started to get the equipment in, I realized that it's actually, we write the check, then they immediately reimburse us. They're waiting for us to write our check so they can have the reimbursement. Their check is already written. So what I'm asking for this evening is for you to approve the purchase. And if you should choose to do so, you look over these and you have other folks look over them. I missed by $1.66 in your motion. So it's actually $34,501.66 because we overspent by $1.66. So to be clear, we will write the check for $34,501.66. They will send us a check for $31,000.50. We will be out $3,400.51. I'm sorry, $3,451.66. That provides your firefighters, 25 of your firefighters, with head-to-toe wildland fire gear.
And they are giddy about it, aren't they?
They certainly are. Yes.
And could you explain to us, the people that don't know, what the difference is between regular and this particular product?
Yes, sir. One of the important things for me was to make sure that it looked different, so we didn't have a mistake, because it is very much different than the normal turnout gear. So normal turnout gear has multiple layers of protection, not only from heat, but also from moisture and specifically steam. This gear does not have all of those layers. It is for wildfires and for rescues. So great scratch resistance and cut resistance for rescue calls. And then it provides good thermal protection for wildfires. It would not be able to be used on car fires or other vehicle fires and structure fires. It also includes a different type of helmet, a different type of boot. So many times when we get out on these calls, by the time the wind winds up and the fire gets started and it's 11 a.m., we don't get home till midnight. So we got a wildfire boot rather than a structure boot. And this boot is a lace-up boot, and it's very comfortable, and it will save our feet tremendously over those really, really long days.
And in turn, the longevity of the regular equipment as well, right? Because you're not wearing it when you don't need to.
Right. You've made a great investment in your firefighters, and they not only have a single set of gear, but because of cancer prevention, they have 2 sets of gear. They often only have 1 pair of boots, though, so they rotate those boots. So this will also help take a little bit of pressure off those boots at $400 a piece, usually.
All right.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move that we authorize Andover Fire and Rescue to purchase wildland gear from the lowest bidder, Feld Fire, using the LSSE grant program in the amount not to exceed $34,501.66.
Second, Hamilton.
And one more thing, our firefighters also write to get these grants, correct?
Yes, thank you for mentioning Lieutenant Dennis Smith did a fantastic job on this, and he had help from his entire team on the entire project. So yes, your firefighters did this all in-house.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions, comments, discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
12-1 fireworks sale discharge dates, times 2024. And Dana is going to talk to us about this.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. The resolution before you tonight for your consideration sets the time that one can sell and discharge fireworks in 2024. We have mirrored the dates and times accordingly from previous years. If approved tonight, we will have these dates and times posted on social media. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
these are the same times from last year, right, Jenny? Because the year before that, it was different.
So we spent a lot of time looking at all the many changes that have occurred over the years, because when the holiday changes days every year, it changes perspectives. So this aligned with the later times for weekends, meaning people would not be going to work more than likely on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning. So that's why you've got those going until midnight. And then in accordance with the night before the 4th of July and the 4th of July, and then Friday, the 5th, is going into a weekend again. So that's the late time again. But it's not, it would seem like it would be easy. Actually, Dana even said, could we just make this standards that's the same every year? And then as we started to look at the historical things, she's like, okay, I get it. We can't do it that way because it changes with this change in date of the holiday.
Guess we could create one for every 7 year,
We somewhat have.
Yeah, then you got the leap year. So,
All right. Any questions? Can I get a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to adopt a resolution outlining the sale and discharge of the fireworks inside the city limits of Andover for the 2024 4th of July holiday.
Second, Barry.
Any further questions or discussion?
It's only like 2 months away.
Are we gonna see that they've cleaned up their act a little bit before we let them start stacking up tents and what have you on that corner?
It's the 30th, right?
I got a text today that they're working on removal of all of that.
Okay.
They were slowed up on removing some of the shipping containers from the rain in areas that aren't gravel surfaced.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Mayoral appointments, library board, and I'll point out before that Caroline Hale was on the board and her time came up and she'd like to continue on that role.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the mayoral reappointment of Carolyn Hale to a second 4-year term on the library board expiring in 2028.
Second, Hamilton.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Member items, and I will start with Mr. Barry.
I have none tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I have a lot of items, but I'm only going to take one of them. So my neighbor and longtime Andover resident from the early 80s, Dave Valerio, passed away a couple of weeks ago. He was super active with the Andover Community Food Bank. He was a substitute teacher for many years, and the teachers, from what I've told, loved when he was a sub in their class. He was super active in the church, and whether people know it or not, his fingerprint and influence is all over this community from when it was very young, and the influence he had on a lot of people in this community. And so I just wanted to share that.
I just want to tell staff, from Matt, from Connor doing the matrix with the Andover Business Improvement Grant, Rick doing the matrix there. I think change is coming, and I think it's awesome just even trying to attempt these new things. And so I really appreciate staff doing that, and those things that we've taken on. So even seems like our neighbors next door are the mayor's bringing that stuff aboard. So it's good to see us leading the pack there, and I appreciate staff doing that. That's all I have. Thank you.
I'd like to, I stopped in today, the Sunlight, help me out.
Children's.
Well, the Sunlight Thrift Store will be opening soon. They will be selling product out the front door and deliver, you can do drop-offs around back of the Andover Plaza. Right now, they plan on being open from 10 till 3 every day but Sunday. And if it warrants, they might open up longer. They're looking for volunteers to help put stuff on the shelves, and also looking for volunteers to sell products. So it's a worthy cause. So if anybody wants to drop things off, don't drop nothing off you wouldn't wear, or don't drop off no nonsense. But if you want to volunteer, it'd be a good thing to do, and they won't require a lot of you. So it's exciting. It's exciting that they're finding another avenue to raise money for troubled youth, or not troubled youth. That's not the right way to say it. You know what I mean? Anyway, I'll stop talking.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Chief Russell, I know you had a busy early night, and I saw something pop up about a structure fire, and hopefully everybody was safe in that.
Yeah, no injuries,
Okay.
pretty significant damage. Looks pretty obvious to be a lightning strike.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I'll keep mine short, but I just felt like it was appropriate to report back to you guys and thank you. Both Councilman Berry and myself attended the League of Kansas Municipalities City Leaders Academy a couple weeks back in Manhattan. Felt like it was really beneficial. There was a lot of content just in general that I learned quite a bit. But then I think the networking outside of that, I'm sure you guys attended at different times, but the networking was really beneficial. In fact, we had some good conversations with Mayor Wu with Wichita, Hayesville Mayor, Clearwater Council Member, Derby Council Member, and a couple topics came out of that. One was that we all agreed that there needs to be more civic involvement from younger people. And so that in talking with Kate Cooley with the league, we're looking at maybe putting together a group that would start to drive that agenda a little bit more at some of the conferences that they have. And then also I followed up with Mayor Wu in Wichita, just saying that, we have a shared border. We obviously aren't in the same county, but a lot of our citizens commute to Wichita for their jobs. And I think it's important to have an open dialogue with these other city leaders all around the community. And I don't know if I should have said it that way because it got me an invite to the Sedgwick County Association of Cities. So I'm going to attend that just as a guest to see what some of the dialogue that they talk about and how they're doing that. So but it, again, was really beneficial, greatly appreciated that you guys allowed us to attend that.
I'll tell you what, too, if you have not, Lily Wu has an amazing story. And if you get a chance to listen to her talk, she loves this country like no other. And her plight to get here is a fascinating story, man. I was really fortunate to get to listen to her talk about it. She's a unique human being that with good things in mind for all. It's just truly, I was taken aback at her life story. I mean, it's a TV movie, you know, so it's truly a blessing, isn't it?
Mhm.
All right.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0.